Do you love to worship? Do you come to worship with the primary purpose to love? Is that what's shaping you as you enter even into this room this morning, that your goal is to love God, to love one another, and even to better love and understand the world, as hard as that might sound? A conversation for many churchgoers sounds something like this. So this weekend, I've been a bachelor. My wife is in Weatherford, Texas, worshiping with her parents at the church there. Kids are gone, and so I'm cooking my own meals, and I'm a good cook, okay? But I did cook something, Friday night, and it looked amazing. It smelled fantastic, and I was like, all right, this is great. And then I cut into it, and I took a bite, and I thought, something is missing. So I took another bite. I just couldn't get over it, so I threw it away. I know, it's a terrible story. You shouldn't waste food. But is there this missing ingredient in worship? In your experience, at least, do you feel like there needs to be something better? There needs to be something more? Or should we have to take something away? Do we need to add something? Do we need to go back to the past? I mean, what is that missing ingredient when you come to worship for you and you go, that tasted good, right? And there is one ingredient that you can never have too much, and that is love. Love cannot be overstated. Love is constant, and what Ryan read this morning, love is repetitive. God's love endures forever. God's love endures forever. You think you've had enough? Guess what? God's love endures forever. You think you might have had enough at this point? Nope. God's love endures forever. God's love endures forever. And it goes on and on and on. This word, steadfast love, in the psalmist from 136, it's actually a word that I brought up earlier in our worship series here. And this word again is hesed, or in Hebrew is chesed. I know, it's kind of funny. And there's not, again, a definition for this word. It is love, it is kindness, it is faithfulness, it is goodness, it is mercy. It can't be described, as Duncan said it so poetically. It goes beyond explanation. In fact, I think that's why the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians and the scribes and the religious leaders were having a tough time in conversation with Jesus. They wanted Jesus to exactly give them the right formula for what it looks like. And they didn't really like what Jesus was giving them. So in Matthew chapter 22, they've had enough with Jesus, and so they bring in the best of the best. This guy has a law degree and a religious degree. And so he wants to ask Jesus, really, wrap this up for us, Jesus. And so in Matthew chapter 22, this guy asks Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says, love God and love neighbors. Now, we can't forget also, though, right? Previously, in the end of Matthew chapter 5 at the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus also says not just love God and love neighbors, but also to love your enemies. And I'll be honest with you, I am a skeptic when it comes to miracles. And I've seen them in my life, and my first response is that really a miracle? But do you realize that we have an opportunity every week when we come together to experience some of the greatest miracles that God has to offer? I mean, think about it. Strangers becoming neighbors, enemies becoming friends, the hurt and the downtrodden becoming whole. All of that are amazing miracles that the world is trying to pull away from. And all that happens through God's love. Hesed, steadfast, enduring love. God's love is the ingredient that elevates worship to extraordinary heights where we can experience renewal and hope. And so we pause, Salah, and we take a look around us and we think about it. What do you think the world around us, our communities, our schools, our families, our homes, our churches, really, what do they need most? Nothing against great experiences, but is that what the world really needs? Another great experience? And nothing against critical voices, but is that really what the world needs, is another critical voice? Guys, love is not overrated. In fact, I find it a lot easier to be impatient, to be unkind, to be bitter, to be envious, to be judgmental, to be angry. I find those things to be way easier than to love. Love is a hard thing to do. You find that out quickly in the Corinth letter, right? So Paul is writing to the Corinthians, and he's not necessarily, so in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 through 14, he's not giving the readers an actual order of worship. But he does offer them a content of what worship looks like in an ancient church in the first century in Corinth. So he says, for example, in chapter 14, verses 27, when you come together, everyone has a hymn or a word of instruction or a revelation, a tongue or an interpretation. That's verse 26. But then also Paul throughout refers to singing, to praying, to giving thanks, to responding with an amen. That's chapter 14, verses 13 through 17. We also know that Paul mentions gifts a lot. And he says, there's a number of gifts among you. All you participants have gifts, and those gifts somehow need to be included in worship. But then Paul says what? He says, but there is this one gift. By the way, it's the greatest gift that we all should be bringing into worship. And this one gift takes a lot of intentionality. It takes hard, devoted work. Because love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious, nor is it boastful. It's not arrogant. Love is not rude. You see, love does not insist on its own way. There's not really a sense of selfishness when it comes to love. Did you know that love is not easily irritable? That love has no room for resentment? Man, did you know that love, for example, does not rejoice in the wrongdoing of others? Love, it rejoices in truth. Love, it bears all things. It has the strength to bear everything. Love believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Love endures forever. Yesterday, while we were setting up Family Promise, Matt Bonine and I picked up a chair and walked it through to set it up for Family Promise. And it reminded me that it takes a lot of work to be married to me. For example, Tara and I would have that much healthier of a relationship if we had invested in bendable tables and chairs, right? So as we lift up couches or tables, I want to lift up. She may want to lift down. I want to go this way. She wants to go that way. we should go this speed. No, we should go this speed, right? And I'm thankful for a couple things. One, my wife's always right, that she's patient with me. And honestly, she loves me for the big things, but especially for the little things. I mean, it takes a lot of work to love, doesn't it? And can you imagine God and the work he does to steadfast love, an enduring love that lasts forever? Imagine God doing that. And then imagining God expecting that exact same type of love from us. God's heavens, God's earth, God's stars, God's sun, God's moon, God's enemies, God's people, great kings, not so great kings, us in our very best, us in our very worst, and even the morsels and crumbs of food. As the psalmist says, God's steadfast love endures forever. It reaches everywhere. In God's church, if we are called to reach everywhere, we reach in love. How about these statements? The New Braunfels Church of Christ loves to worship. That sounds pretty good. The New Braunfels Church of Christ come to worship, to love God, and to love others. That sounds good. This morning, I want to invite you, and I didn't ask the sound room to do this, but do you mind turning off a few lights if you can? Jason or Victor, whoever's back there. So I'm going to invite you to practice something with me, okay? So you're sitting in your pew, so I want you to uncross your legs. If you're crossing your legs, I want you to sit like this, just your legs up like this. So there's a lot of legs crossed. That's good. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our palms, okay? And so I'm going to ask you to put your palms out like this. And then I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And I don't want you to think about anything when you breathe in. I only want you to think about things when you're breathing out. And in every exhale, I want you to remove all the stuff in your life. God, remove this sin. Remove this anger. Remove this fear. Remove this desire and this temptation. Push it out of me. Now I want you to turn your palms up. And I only want you to think about your inhale. And I want you to invite God into your life. Every breath you take. Is God filling you right now? Every last part of you. And once you come to that point where you just absolutely know that God has fully consumed you, I want you once again to turn your palms out. And I want you to ask God to share this with the world. Share this with a friend. Share this with an enemy. Lights, please. Bob Goff, in his book, Love Does, he reminds us that the use of our palms is a proper posture of love. I'll be honest with you, there was a time in my life where I would have thought clenching fists was a good response to love. Right? Because it's protective. You feel like you're in control. It's strength. You're unwilling to let people take advantage of you. Not just of you, but for those you love. And honestly, I could have been no more wrong. There are many evils in this world where I feel where my fists need to clench. But Jesus teaches us differently. Jesus says palms need to be seen. Whether it's palms like this or whether it's palms like this. As Goff states, palms up means you have nothing to gain, nothing to lose, and nothing to hide. I think about those times in my life, for example, where I just kind of have to give up and say, look, I'm tired. I've got no more energy in this. I'm done. I'm empty. And I need to be filled up with something completely better. Or another great expression of palms up is when a child comes running to you, an expression of the utmost love. And when that child comes running to you, you're going to be like this? No. We're going to be like this. Palms up means you are strong enough to be vulnerable, even with your enemies. That you are strong enough to be vulnerable with God. That you are strong enough to be vulnerable with neighbors. That you are strong enough to be vulnerable with your church. And we know that this action was Jesus' ultimate expression of love. Palms up. Can you think of any other great response or explanation of God's enduring love than the cross? Palms up to receive God's love, and palms out to give God's love. As we wrap up this series, I hope you understand that in the context of worship, as we sing out and read even from the book of Psalms, that there is one repetitive ingredient that we should always think about, that we always consider, that is constant and can never, ever be overstated enough. And that is, his steadfast love endures forever.